Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Norwich Talk for another match preview. I'm joined by my good pal, Mr. Stuart Hodge. Hodgie, how you doing, my man?
Not too bad. I've been told that I look like Chris Gorham, so actually maybe I'm just Chris Gorham for the next 10, 20 minutes since I shaved
I
my
was going to say,
head.
I have no idea. What do you know? What you're on par with Chris. I'm gonna
I'll
pick you
put
up.
I'll put on the glasses, and that
The
probably
sexy
like
glasses.
adds to the effect as well. But it annoys me how the light reflects on them, so we'll take them off again.
We've had this debate many a time, haven't we? Honestly, I want you to stick with the beard and just go full Pookie. Pookie in a Scotland top. I'd absolutely love to see that. It'd be quite the sight. I don't know why I've asked how you are. We've been chatting for the last however long, but it's just a video thing. I don't know if you noticed that, where you ask someone how they are, even though you
It's the
can
way
still
that
see
you
the
make your
phalanges.
guest feel at ease, isn't it? It's the way that you
Yeah.
make
Are
them
you are
because
you are you at
obviously
ease? Are you
I
comfortable?
I struggle in front of a camera, man. I'm such a shrinking violet. That I find it so hard and I get nervous. No, do you know what? I talk rubbish so much now that I just get used to talking rubbish. So
I was gonna say I'm in that position as
enjoy.
well. Also, just before we actually enjoy exactly, before we get into the video, I will mention you were just on. Was that today or was it yesterday? You filmed Terrace Talk with Connor
I
on
was
Pinkham.
on Terrace Talk with Connor this week. I was on the ball with Michael Bailey earlier in the week as well. Yeah, see, to be honest, there's periods where I just become very promiscuous when it comes to Norwich City podcasting, and
I
we
was
are
gonna say
cut.
that was the word before, wasn't it?
We're
Promiscuous.
yes, we are currently in a promiscuous period of podcasting.
Hodgie the podcast pimp. Nice. There you go. That's your tagline, isn't it? But we're here today after about 3 minutes of waffle to talk about Stoke. So that's probably why we're waffling, because Stoke are quite boring. But we're going to give my preferred lineup. I've not actually consulted with Hodgie before this about the lineup, but I'm sure you'll no doubt tell me if I'm being stupid, which I look forward to. And I've got a few stats on Stoke as well, which we'll mention after the team. But to start with the team, I've gone for Tim Krul in goal, Eunice in left back, Ben Gibson, Grant Hanley, and Max Aarons to complete the back four. Here's where it gets a little bit interesting. I've gone for Sorensen on the left side of central midfield, Skip on the right, Todd Cantwell in left wing, whatever you want to call it, Mario Vrancic in the 10, Emi Buendia in the on the right. Jesus me, words aren't working, are they? Timo Pukki up front. That's my lineup. An interesting comment, by the way, I just want to get out there immediately, is in Daniel Farke's press conference, he mentioned, I don't know if you saw this, Hodgie, or not, but he said only Kintia and Janulis are going to play left back from now on, which is why I've got Sorensen there. But what are you saying about
Oh,
my lineup? Does that get a nod of approval?
well, first thing is, I must admit, I have been working quite assiduously and well on many of my own tasks today. So I'm coming on this, as you know, I just sort of jumped on kind of last minute. I've
Yeah.
not had a chance to see what Daniel Farkas said at his press conference or the team news on that front. That's a really cool bit of news
Mm.
and very, very interesting. One, that he's committed himself to that, especially given the success of the Sorensen experiment. And two, the fact that he's actually coming out and saying it publicly, whether he's maybe doing a kind of double bluff as managers like to do, where he's saying, haha, yeah, Sorensen's not going to play there. And then we notice that, oh yeah, he lines up at left back. Haha, you thought, Michael O'Neill. But no, Daniel Farker doesn't strike me as the type to be disingenuous like that. He doesn't really sort of play games in the media particularly. So that's an interesting bit of news. And what I would say is, it's also maybe a bit blasé from him, given the injury crises that we have suffered at various spells this season. The idea that we could have two fit left backs at once for any consistent period of time seems to
Yeah.
be like, yeah, being full of confidence. But yeah, no, Giannulis, good. Let's just needs game time. Just needs to adapt to the pace, and he's an absolutely quality player. We've seen that from the fact that you're a minor celebrity in Greece now. After the signing video that you did
Yeah.
on Giannulis, I want to see him get more game time. I think he's a quality operator. Good to see him there. Rest of your team, excited to see more of Sorensen in that midfield role. So yeah, I like the idea of him there. Are you asking if that's the team that I would go for, or the team that you think will line up? What are we going for? Is this
It's
like
what I
what we
would go
expect?
for. It's a
Right.
preferred 11 as opposed to expected, because I don't think Sorensen makes it into an expected one, to be honest with you.
Right, okay. So the change I would make in terms of if I was doing the team is Kenny for Vrancic. Other than that, I would go with what you've done.
It's a good point.
Uh,
Yeah.
that would be my change. Despite Kenny having a poor game, playing in the 10 against Swansea. I think it was one of his poorest games of the season, and I think he has impressed in that role this season. What do I think Daniel Farke will do? I think Daniel Farke will pair Kenny McLean and Oliver Skipp in the midfield area.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing, is it?
No, it's not. And it'll be interesting to see who his three behind the striker are. And also, I don't think he'll do this, but I mean, Pookie's he's just not looking as sharp as he was. I still think you've got to start him, just given what he's done in his time at the club, his goal ratio, all of the rest of it. But there are other options there, and would it maybe be interesting to give? I mean, it'd be quite a burden from one sense of it, but I know the club have got a lot of confidence in Adam Ida, so maybe fling him in.
To be fair, I've got confidence in Ida as well. The only thing I'm going to say about this 11, because a lot of it in these preview videos, I sort of repeat myself because the players don't change that often. But the reason I've put Sorensen in there is because I reckon, right, because he's got that left back experience, he knows what to do when Giannoulis goes forward. And to me, that would make us sort of just defensively solid, which has been really important to the way Norwich play because, we're not scoring goals for fun this season, are we? And I think, for example, if Giannoulis can just sort of have the license to roam and do whatever the hell he wants, that's where we'll see the best from him. I reckon Sorensen will then slot in naturally and have that experience to know how to cover, which is my thinking behind that. McLean in the 10's a good shout. I honestly forgot he existed whilst making this 11. That said, it would also sort of further playing McLean there or starting him there because Vrancic off the bench is a different beast, isn't he? Especially at Carrow Road. So he could come off and make a difference. Adam Ida, wouldn't oppose to him up front. There was a lot of hype before the season, wasn't there, about Adam Ida? I'd like to see him. I want to see him score a goal. Again, I know he did on the first day of the season, but there's been such that sort of a giant gap where he's been sent off, been injured. I'd love to see him get a goal and contribute 7 or 8 this season. That would be really, really good. But in terms of the lineup,
I thought he would make double figures at the start of the season. I did actually think that he had that in him, and I think I said it, perhaps on one of the Norwich Talk podcasts actually, about the confidence that I had in him, but also had this idea that Norwich City were going to come down to this league and score barrel loads of goals. So I've been proved a wee bit wrong on a couple of fronts there. I don't think Ida will start the game. I think he may well see time off the bench, especially if we need a goal or if we're comfortably up. And Pookie I think Pookie just needs to try and save a bit of energy into his legs, as and where we can allow him to. But my main sort of area that I'm focusing on for this game is how much threat we can carry in the wide areas. Because in recent games, it's the quietest and the least productive I've seen Max Aarons at championship level. Yeah. So what I want to see is a bit of the old Max Aarons just sort of ripping defences apart. I think, unfortunately, Neil Warnock kind of showed a template for how you can... It's almost like a blueprint for how you can stop Norwich making the most of playing out from the back and then making the most of these overlaps in the wide areas. So that's going to be interesting. I think the script is there for a big game from Giannoulis. I think this is the kind of game where he could really make a difference, because if there's Stokes, if you look in the defensive midfield area, so you're talking about the way that Skipp and Sorensen might cover for our sort of full backs in that screening area, that's where Stoke maybe lack legs. They'll probably play Joe Allen and John Obi Mikel, who are both ageing and both players that are sort of on the downhill. This coming from a guy that turns 32 tomorrow, by the way, so I'm very much in the downhill as well. But yeah, like I think that's going to be the area where hopefully Norwich City can get a bit more back to form, as seeing a bit out of those sort of guys. I want to give a shout out to Todd Cantwell as well, who I thought was the only one that had any semblance of a spark at times against Swansea. So I'm hoping we can get a big game from Todd as well, and I think that could be quite important. And we just need a goal. It can come off someone's bum or shoulder or whatever. I don't really mind. Let's just get a goal in, and then hopefully if one goal comes, then that kind of collective anxiety, which you could see from the finishing against Swansea, that they were just anxious. They were blasting it over the bar and sort of tamely hitting it at the keeper. Like, if we can get rid of that collective anxiety, then I think Norwich City will calm down a bit, hopefully hit their stride a wee bit, and with the fixture list getting a bit kinder again, we can get back in and about that top two. That said, having commentated on Brentford's game against Middlesbrough, I think everyone's fighting for second unless there's a major injury or two in that squad, and also if they suffer a slump and their mentality changes and they become a bit nervous. I think that's the only way that Brentford don't win the title, because they look streets ahead of everyone else in the division.
Yeah, they're a different breed, aren't they, at the moment, Brentford? I think to sum up, Swansea is a bit desperate when it. Norwich look a bit sort of like they're rushing themselves, which is not, it's very uncharacteristic of Norwich.
It is, aye.
Is, which is why there's maybe a bit of concern around the slump in form. Realistically, we've lost one game in like 7 or 8 now, which is not actually that bad. But when you're a Norwich fan expecting so much, then it looks a lot worse than what it actually is. You mentioned Stoke, which leads me to just sort of completely look away from the camera for about a minute here as I read out what I have on Stoke, which is their 9th in the table at the minute. Now, again, I made the same point about, I think it was Middlesbrough, which is they're not quite good enough for the playoffs at the minute, but they're not mid-table fodder. Now, from a Stoke perspective, now I'm imagining being a Stoke fan here, obviously, but I can imagine they're pretty pleased with that, because before Michael O'Neill joined, it was all doom and gloom for them, wasn't it? Who was it? What's his name?
Nathan Jones.
Nathan Jones, that's it. He's now back at Luton, of course. It just didn't click for him, did it at all? Which is sad, because I quite like Nathan Jones. And they were struggling. Michael O'Neill came in, and I think it was Ben Bloom who told me this on a podcast I did with him months ago, back in August or September. He said that Stoke's form from when Michael O'Neill joined was put them like 7th in the table, which suggested to him that they could be contending for the playoffs. And by looking at the table now and everything that's gone on with Stoke this season, that seems a fair assumption. So in terms of from a Stoke perspective, I'm sure they're absolutely delighted with how they're doing. The most draws in the league.
They're kind of happy with how they're doing. At the start of the season, they were playing better, and they had a real threat when they had Tyrese Campbell in the team.
Yeah.
Since he's had his spell out injured, that has really blunted their threat. And now they look a bit more like what you would expect from a sort of Michael O'Neill team, looking at the job that he did at Northern Ireland and such, where they're a bit more workmanlike and a bit more sort of like try and beat us rather than us come out to try and beat you. And I think that's just because they don't really have weapons. They're a team that's struggling for goals as well. The big difference being that Norwich City have the quality. We have the attacking armoury to score goals in this league. There's no excuse for us to be going this amount of time without scoring a goal. So that's why there is concerns for Norwich. Whereas for Stoke, I think their fans kind of maybe understand that they maybe don't have the attacking assets that we do, and that's why they're struggling to score goals. And I think overall, they've got to be happy with the campaign that they're having. They're absolutely nowhere near relegation trouble after 2 seasons where they were kind of on the cusp of being in a real dogfight. And last season they definitely were before Michael O'Neill came in and lifted them away from it. So yeah, I think Stoke will be sort of happy with where they are, but especially given that they established themselves as a Premier League team for a while, I think now that they've got him in charge, maybe not this season, but next, they'll definitely be targeting playoffs next season.
And the expectations will be a lot higher next season if they weren't to go up this season, which I think we could agree is seemingly unlikely at this point. Although in the Championship, you can never predict it, can you? Like I've just done.
That's why it's the best league in the world, mate. And that's genuinely my favourite league in the world. I don't want to go up for that reason, but I kind of do. But I kind of don't. I'm torn.
No, it's weird, isn't it? Because we always bang the drum about how good the Championship is, but then we're trying to get out of it all the time, which is just quite funny. But you mentioned that Stoke are struggling with scoring goals. They scored 32 this season, 1.1 per game, which is just about less than Norwich. And I think they've scored 3 goals less than Norwich this season, which is quite telling towards Norwich's season, in my opinion, anyway. And again, when you mention they're sort of come and take us on rather than taking the game to the opposition, this season they've averaged less than 50% possession in games, which makes sense towards that point. 13 clean sheets in 28 games is almost a 1 in 2.
That's a big point. That's where they're really good. And what he's really good at is he's really good at organising the defence, and Harry Souttar in particular. Collins as well. He seems to have unearthed a couple of really, really strong young defenders that he's managing to nurture and mould. And if you look at the job that Michael O'Neill did with Northern Ireland, then they were getting loads of clean sheets against some really good teams at times. And that is where he is strong. He's strong when it comes to building a defensive base that is hard to break down. And so many teams, that's the approach they take against Norwich City, because they know
Yeah.
that we're the kind of team that likes to come out and attack them. The one thing that I do think is, I mean, we've got to be due a game where we really give a team a bit of a pasting. Not necessarily in terms of the scoreline, but at least in terms of the amount of chances we're creating. I'm hoping that this is going to be that game. But Stoke are hard to score against. The stats bear that out.
Do you know what? We keep saying about how difficult Stoke are to score against and how Norwich don't score that many this season. So right back now, I'm going to bring in the last time we played Stoke, which is when we won 3-2. We went 3-0 up in 50 minutes, which is one of 2 times this season where Norwich has scored 3 goals or more in a game. And looking at everything now, it's such a bizarre game, isn't it? That was the game where obviously Buendia got his first red card of the
Yeah,
season,
send
a
it
double
off.
book him. Yeah, and it was a ridiculous one. Again, it was naivety. I took the side of, we know the officials are terrible, but equally Buendia shouldn't have done what he did. And in that game, it was a high foot, wasn't it, for the second yellow, where he really didn't need to do it, and it was a bit like, ugh. You can only sort of complain about it so many times. But looking at all these
That
stats
one was
here,
his fault. That one was his
it
fault.
was
The
absolutely.
last one wasn't. The last
Oh,
one,
see, I sit on the side where just don't slide in. That's just my
No,
opinion.
but do you know what? He pulled out of the challenge. That's the thing. He pulled out of the challenge and the guy dived. That's just what modern football's become. This
Yeah.
namby-pamby, throw yourself around and get people sent off. It's what's ruined the sport. One of the many things that have ruined the sport. I could do a whole podcast for you in that. VAR, another thing.
Well, as I say, if we go back up, we'll definitely be chatting about VAR again. That'll be happening for sure. Although,
It's
you know, again,
just boring, mate. It's honestly, it's just boring. Like that moment of ecstasy when you score a goal, just gone. You know what I mean? It's like, let's stand with our arms folded while they look at a monitor. Away you go, man.
I say that is what Carrow Road was last season, which was a sad state of affairs. But looking at Stoke here again, you mentioned how they're sort of this rough and tumble team, because they are, and they've got a lot of, I don't know if to call them championship veterans, but they're names that we recognise, having been around for quite some time. So Stephen Fletcher, James Chester, Morgan Fox, who I think was formerly at Millwall, wasn't he? Nick Powell, Sam Clucas now, who is sort of becoming that well-known name. I know there was high hopes for him at one point. I don't think he's quite reached the heights of that he could have. And obviously you've got players like Angus Gunn, who isn't young per se, but still has that potential. Who was obviously set back by an injury. You mentioned, I've forgotten the guy's name who at the back, Sutard.
Harry Suter,
Suter, that's it.
who's, I think he's an Australian international now. He came through the Dundee United Academy, I believe, and he's massive. He's really tall, and he's a unit, and he can play a bit. The other thing, just on Morgan Fox, I think Sheffield Wednesday and Charlton Forest.
Wednesday, that's it. Not Millwall. Shocking for me. He's a left back, isn't he? Have I got that right?
Yeah, left back.
Okay, cool. Well, at least I knew that anyway. They've got Tyrese Campbell as well, who is pretty decent. Now, one thing that's interesting to me is, I mentioned this quite about a lot of teams, so maybe it's not as unusual as I once thought, which is Nick Powell scored 7 goals this season, and then you've got Fletcher and Campbell on 6, and beyond that, the top goal scorer is on 2. So in terms of, it's similar to Norwich, isn't it? In that the struggle for goals is probably because teams aren't chipping, or other players aren't chipping in with goals, which hopefully Norwich can capitalise on.
Yeah, that's actually a very fair point. And I think Stephen Fletcher, he's kind of been dogged by injuries throughout his career, but he is a player. He's got a lot of skill, and he actually really suits the style that I think he's the kind of striker that Michael O'Neill can really get the best out of. I mean, Michael O'Neill made Kyle Lafferty look like a world beater. So what he can do with a player of Stephen Fletcher's talent, if he can stay fit, is I mean, there's definitely ability there. Nick Powell has been forced to play up front quite a lot. Nick Powell's role is more as a number 10.
Yeah, I was going to say,
and as a creative sort of influence.
Is he the former
there,
United guy?
Yeah, he was at Manchester United, came through the Crew Academy, and then he's bounced about a bit. But Nick Powell's like a real talent, and he's a player that he's even in a role that's not necessarily natural to him for Stoke. He's scored some headed goals this season, even though he's probably more of a technician. But Stoke have had their injury problems as well, and I think the difference is their squad's not as strong as ours, so they've not been able to, especially in the attacking areas, withstand a lot of their quality operators being out injured. So I think that's the big difference, and that's why we should win this game. On paper, we should. Football's not won on paper. There's an old cliche, but we should win this game, and I'll be Norwich City fans deserve a performance from their team. I know we can't go and watch them, right? And
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt that the Carrow Road factor has. I think it's really affected things. I mean, in football in general, I've not got any stats bearing it up, but home records must be a lot worse, and away records must be a lot better. Definitely seems that way when I'm commentating games. And yeah, I mean, we should win this game. And to be honest, given the run of form we're on, I think we need to.
I think my only concern for this is probably Stephen Fletcher, which is a weird one, isn't it? In that we know what a talented player he still is. I remember I've seen him twice this season. Once was against Reading when they went to Reading and they won 3-0. They barely had the ball, but they still won 3-0. And then Watford, where he came off the bench. And I think that's their like one loss in the last however many games. And he came off the bench. He scored a really, really nice goal. I don't know how long ago it was now, but it was like one of those goals where you just appreciate the positioning. And being sort of a massive fan of Timu Pukki, you sort of learn to love, and Jordan Rhodes as well, you learn to love how sort of intelligent some strikers can be. And Stephen Fletcher is definitely that. And as you mentioned, they're going to be really solid at the back. And when Norwich struggle to sort of break teams down, it's evident, and we just don't score. But we're going to rely on that one piece of magic, aren't we? And hopefully, fingers crossed, Buendia coming back in can be that difference. Not sure if he will be or not, but because you mentioned earlier, didn't you, Neil Warnock sort of setting a template for everyone to just stop these star players. And I said this on the podcast the other week. So the other week was the other day, wasn't it? In that the best players are the players that sort of defeat the man marking. Like it's a very simple thing to do, isn't it? To man mark someone. And for example, like Todd Cantwell against Millwall, he didn't rise up to the challenge. He didn't against Middlesbrough either. Neither did Buendia. For a player to be from sort of decent, good, to be great, whatever happens, you make the best of, and hopefully Emi
You
Buendia
win.
can
You
do
win
that.
your individual battle, right? Football's 11 against 11. If more players win their individual battles than don't, chances are your team wins the game. If all your players win their individual battles, your team wins the game, barring a sterling performance from the opposition goalkeeper. So that's where Norwich City do need to make the most of it. And then also, when it comes to defending set pieces is a big strength of Stokes. They've scored a lot of goals from set pieces. So and they tend to make the most of them and very much play for them, prioritise them. So when I look at goals like that first one against Swansea, where a throw in comes into the box, it's defended abjectly badly. Max Aarons makes a critical block, a goal saving block, and then the corner comes in and Krul has a wee bit of a moment. And like, to be honest, every goalkeeper has them.
Yeah, you can move on from it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Tim Krul's got the mentality to bounce back from that, and I'm not worried about it sort of hanging over him. I think that's the bit where I kind of think Norwich City need to be on their game when it comes to defending set pieces, and I think that's the one area where I would say we need to make sure that we're really tight, because I think generally defensively we've been good this season, and like I mean, as a Norwich fan, you're always saying we should be defending set pieces better, but in that big game against Swansea, I expected us to lift it. So for us to struggle that badly from a throw in and then a corner and then the rest of the game to pan out the way it did was really disappointing. Against Stoke, it needs to be better. It needs to be tighter in that sort of regard. And we need to do more when it comes to creating chances. Simple as that.
Yeah, they're a much bigger team, aren't they, Stoke? The last thing I'm going to say or mention about Stoke is they play a flat 4-3-3, which I think could work in Norwich's favour, in the fact that we'll have a number 10 and perhaps they won't so much. And hopefully the game is won by that number 10 who, if it's Kenny McLean, it's going to be a lot more fluent than I think it would be with Mario Vrancic. If it is Mario Vrancic, it would be sort of finding those key passes more often. And as you mentioned earlier, Joe Allen and John Obi Mikel in the middle, we're definitely going to have the legs on them. And someone like Ollie Skip's going to be really important, where in transition, he's going to get the ball and he's going to move it quickly and take advantage of the slower legs. And also, in the last 5 games for Stoke, 4 draws and a loss. So I think they're going to be hungry for 3 points.
They're going to be hungry for 3 points. We're going to be hungry for 3 points. Both teams need a win. Both teams need goals. The 2 areas where Norwich City can win the game is if we start playing better in wide areas, particularly the fullbacks getting forward and doing some stuff. And in the middle area, we can overrun them. It doesn't matter that they've got an extra body in there. I think with the dynamism that we've got there. And that's why if your Sorensen selection was to come to fruition, it would be really interesting, because if one of the things that made me, when we did our signings podcast, the first one that we did, one of the reasons I was so excited about him was just looking at the stats in terms of his ability shuttling between boxes. And I know, having spoken to Stuart Webber personally and also comments he's made in the media, that was the big area that they were looking to improve over the summer. He was bought for that purpose. Just by chance, he's been shoehorned into a totally different role. So now I want to see him playing in his natural role. I want to see that, because he'll obviously have the confidence and he'll kind of know his teammates a wee bit. So if you've got him and Ollie Skip in that central area, that's potentially a really exciting partnership. And also, like, you've got to remember, there's players that haven't really had the chance to properly strut their stuff yet. Kieran Dowell's a player that's got a lot of ability. I want to see him maybe get the chance to unlock that. And he would be, I don't expect him to play from the start, but he would be a really interesting selection as the number 10 to see what he can do in terms of providing some ammunition for Pookie, because again, he presents the kind of problem that Stoke might struggle to deal with. If you fling high balls into the box against Stoke, then it's meat and drink to their defenders, especially if Timu Puki's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you try and play around about these bigger guys where they struggle on the ground a wee bit, that's maybe where you can have a bit of success. And exactly, that's what we're good at. So from that perspective, maybe this is the game where we started banging a few goals again. Fingers crossed, anyway.
Fingers crossed. The last thing I'll say is Daniel Farke did say in his presser, which I should have said earlier, that Hernandez, who I had in this lineup before seeing that comment, and Kieran Dowell aren't fit enough to start. So that explains that.
They could be in the bench.
No,
As I say, I hadn't
they'll be
seen
in the
the
squad.
team news. So who was your three behind the striker again? Just to remind us.
Buendia, Vramčić, and Cantwell.
Right, aye. So you didn't have Hernandez starting anyway, right?
No, I would. Oh, sorry. Before I saw the comment, I had Hernandez instead of Cantwell.
Ah, right, okay. No, I wouldn't drop Todd. I thought he was good again. Well, as good as anyone was against Swansea, to be honest.
Yeah, it was more just of wanting to see Arnel Hernandez, to be honest with you. Because again, he's going to need time to bed in, isn't he? To sort of get up to pace, and against a team who aren't actually that quick, seems like quite a good opportunity to do that. But it's not going to happen. Daniel Farke said he's injured. Fair enough.
Onel Hernandez is a in terms of yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't think, in terms of the forward thinking for the squad, I think if we're playing Onel Hernandez, it's because other things aren't working. And I love Onel. I've got a lot of time for him. I think he's a really honest player. I think he's had some great moments in a City jersey, but yeah, I think we've got more talented wide players than him.
Cracking tweets as well. He hates Ipswich, and for that, he has my respect. What about a score, Hodgie, for the game, as the last thing to say?
Well, on competing podcasts, I said 2-1. We've won loads of games 2-1 this year, and I think we win this one 2-1, but possibly like 2-1 going on 4-1 kind of thing, where we should have scored more than we did, but at least we scored.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
In terms of chance creation, we keep creating, don't we? We just don't take. So, I'd rather that than not creating the actual chances.
I know that the people inside the club would rather that we were creating fewer, higher quality chances than loads of chances and not scoring. So I'm sure that's an area they're working on.
I was going to say they're much more clever than me, aren't they? I'm going to go for a 2-1 Norwich, just because I do think we'll win it.
Just copying me, mate.
Back. Well, as well as wanting to be, not Chris Gorham, sorry, Stuart Hodge. I would very much like to be Stuart Hodge. To be fair, being Chris Gorham wouldn't be too bad either. There he is. You all right, Chris?
Yeah, here's the best Norwich City commentator.
I say now you've got to do an impression of him, haven't you?
Here's the second best Norwich City commentator.
Oh dear. I think that's everything for now. I think you've got our scores, you've got our thoughts. Hodgie, what are you plugging today?
Myself. This makes me feel I should have written a book. Maybe that's a task. That's what I should have done with lockdown, man. I've just been sitting in lockdown, so I don't know, playing Football Manager. Maybe I should have written a book.
Like a damn fool.
I will have stuff to flog soon, and I would say very much watch this space. I think I've been saying that for about 6 months. We are getting closer and closer to the big reveal on a really exciting new project that I'm working on. Also, if you look through my Twitter feed this week, I've been doing quite a bit of interesting stuff. I've been on a couple of other Norwich City podcasts. Any basketball fans out there, I've been doing a deep dive on the team that I support, the Orlando Magic.
Why do you support the Magic? I never asked why.
Right, so this is 5 years before you were born. I had NBA Live 95 for the Mega Drive.
Right.
And the Magic were the team that I went on that because they had the coolest court. to 6-year-old me. 16-bit graphics. They had the coolest court, and they also had like Shaq and Penny, which I learned later on. Obviously, one of the greatest Magic teams ever. But yeah, so I've been doing a big deep dive with them on a podcast with one of the main sort of Orlando Magic correspondents, where we kind of turn the tables. I grill him on his opinions on the team and what he thinks sort of moving forward. And it's a really, really important time for the Orlando Magic franchise. And I've also writing for a publication, which is part of a business that I'm a co-founder and part owner of, Tech for Good. I've been writing about some really interesting dementia screening technology, which sounds kind of semi-boring, but given that my family's been affected by dementia and Alzheimer's, it was a piece that meant quite a lot to me. And also could help in the fight against a terrible, terrible disease that loads of the listeners to this will probably have been affected by. So that if you look through my Twitter feed, there's usually enough stuff. Oh, and if you want to see how good Brentford are, as my pinned tweet, I've got me commentating on them absolutely scalping Borough. So if you want to see why we're not going to win the title this year, have a watch of that.
I was going to say, the highlights are a lot easier to watch. You know, there's tears from the football, but then it's your lovely voice. So I feel a bit better after that.
Oh, that's nice, mate. Thank you very much.
Anyway, that is everything for today's video. We'll catch up tomorrow. When I say we, I mean me and you, the viewer, after the game.
Not me.
Hopefully, no, won't be talking to you ever again, mate. Never again.
No. Football friend!
we are, well, that's what it is, isn't it? Oh, dear me. We are living in the in-betweeners. But yeah, we'll chat after the game. Hopefully a win for Norwich City. I'm actually desperate for a win at this point. I'm desperate for a goal, to be honest with you. But until then, stay safe.
See, before you go, I've got one question for you.
Oh,
if we were in between us, which ones would we be?
Well, I've got glasses. It's obviously Will, isn't it?
No, I disagree.
And I'm a bit of an idiot as well. I was going to swear it, but I realised it's monetized.
You're Jay. You're Jay. I think you're Jay.
They're all insults in their own way, but they're also compliments.
And I think, like, pre-haircut, I'm probably kind of Willish.
I wouldn't have had you down as a Will.
No? What would you have me down as? Because
I have down as a Simon.
Oh, I'll take that.
Yeah, just just Simon.
Yeah, I'll take that. The one that's best with the ladies, which was so not true of me as a teenager. Excellent. I'm happy with that. Let's go with it.
I said, do you know what? We'll do that next time we're on a pod. We'll find some like sitcoms to compare ourselves to.
Sounds good to me, mate.
And insult each other passively.
I'm going back into Chris Gorham mode and bidding everyone farewell.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so until next time, we'll see you again very soon.